I thought we were going to have the first win of the season for Sam Houston State to celebrate here on the Thursday edition, the Week 9 edition of the Phil Steele Show. But unfortunately, the Bearcats just continue to be the best 0-8 team in the history of college football as they lost another nail-biter on Wednesday, 37-34. Phil, at home to UTEP. Another incredible performance, but another disappointing result for the Bearcats. He's Phil Steele on Twitter, at PhilSteele042. Trip Hurd, the Lock Doctor, is here at Trip Hurd. I'm at Kyle Shass. We do have another winner to announce, though, Phil, from our Phil Steele Plus competition. Frank Lohr, I'm awaiting his email address. Get with me back on YouTube, the Varsity channel. He correctly submitted, most accurately submitted the Ohio State-Penn State score. Guessed that one at 24-13. So pretty close. Frank Lohr is our winner from Week 8, so go ahead and get with me on YouTube. Other winners, Phil, 2-1 last week, missing Auburn by half a point. I missed Georgia State by half a point as they won against Louisiana. But, Tripp, it's kind of unclear what he brings to the table each and every week. But, it was a good week still, nonetheless. Looking forward to Week 9, Phil.
Yeah, definitely. And congratulations, Frank. Nice forecast there. Almost nailed it right on the head.
I wanna let you in on something I learned about Florida State, Phil, before we get into the games remaining this midweek. Thursday and Friday, we've got 3 more. We're going to touch on all of those. Then the biggest games in Week 9, we got 2 ranked-on-ranked showdowns, so it ticked down from the 4 we've had the last couple of weeks. But I'm watching FSU Duke. It was actually our college football Saturday night game of the week this past week. We'll have UCLA and Colorado in Pasadena coming up with Chris Hassel and Mike Golick Jr., Phil, but I learned about the Goldfish Garnet, and before you jumped in the chat here on the stream as we bring you this podcast, I asked Tripp, look, you claim to be the biggest FSU fan out there, but you don't even know about Garnet the Goldfish? Apparently this Goldfish has been at every game this year. More games than Tripp 2 has probably been Florida State in its entire life. What's up with that?
Yeah, Garnet, I mean, he's a bigger fan than me, I guess. I haven't been to a game since 2014. The last time I went and saw the Noles in person, that was the ACC championship game against Georgia Tech, and they were about to go on to the college football playoff, the first college football playoff, to get slaughtered by Oregon. But yeah, hadn't been to a game in a while. When's the last time you've been to a game in person, Phil?
In person, it's been, believe it or not, I would say it's been over 20 years.
Wow.
Well, I believe that. I believe that. I thought you were going to tell me something like 5 years ago. I'd have been like, no way.
Yeah, during the season, I got 12 TVs in front of me. So I'm watching 12 games all day long on Saturday. If I went to one game, I would basically miss 24 or 36 games. Can't afford to do that. And then once Thanksgiving hits, the Sunday after Thanksgiving, I start writing the newsletter, or not the newsletter, the magazine for next year. And that is a process. It is a 7-month process, pretty much on a deadline from day one. So it's even tough. But I might find a bowl game to go to with my daughter. She's 17, about to go off to college, and I haven't been to a college football game with her yet. So I might take her to a college football bowl game this year. Any suggestions which one I should go to?
The Jacksonville State James Madison Phil Steele Bowl. We're still ironing out those details.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
We got to take a vote on that.
The Bahamas Bowl, there was break. I saw Brett McMurphy tweet this from the Action Network. The Bahamas Bowl we know will not be played in the Bahamas this year because of stadium renovations. It's coming to be played in Charlotte at the 49ers on-campus stadium, Jerry Richardson Stadium. So I'm not sure that's quite the consolation or equal, footing, equal experience as what it could be in the Bahamas. But Phil, we'll get to Georgia Southern. I'm supporting the Eagles. I'm wearing a polo for those that are watching on the Varsity channel on YouTube. Of course, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, College Sports Now. 1 of 2 appearances for Phil this week. Continue to listen, rate, review, and subscribe. More information at philsteele.com for the unicorn himself. Inside the press box info, Phil Steele Plus, all that good stuff. But you brought up your daughter on the show with Wayne Cook and Stephen Hartzell this week. You did reveal, so I do know what you do out of season. While you might not watch football in person during the season, you are a Swiftie. You checked out a Taylor Swift concert with your daughter recently. So while you're not going to football games, we know you have an empire, a business to run. You do get out and mingle with the Swifties, and you are unapologetic.
Yes, I am a girl dad. There is no doubt about it. And I asked my daughter what she wanted to do for her birthday, and she says, I want to go to a Taylor Swift concert. So we looked it up, found the city she was in, and went there. And she has prepped me, by the way, before we go to a Taylor Swift or a Harry Styles concert. I have to listen to all the songs. So I actually knew the songs, but I was probably the only person in the entire arena that wasn't singing every song. I tell you, that is a great crowd to be with. It was a lot of fun.
That's amazing. We have officially set a record to more than 5 minutes before we've even talked a specific game with Phil here this afternoon, week 9. It's a special day, Trip, special day. Let's get to it. Georgia Southern is at home hosting Georgia State. This is just the 10th time these two teams have met. 1.5 is what the Eagles are favored by. 63.5 is the total. 7:30 on ESPN2. Georgia State has won 6 of 9, Phil, and 3 straight in the series, all by 8 points or less. These have been closely contested games between these two rivals. Panthers have covered 4 of the last 5 overall.
Yeah, to me, this is what I call a popcorn game, which is I'm just going to watch it and learn about the two teams. I mean, how do you go against Georgia State? I love what they've done so far this year. They only have one loss. That was to Troy. And that game was even closer than the final score would indicate. Troy got a late touchdown. How do you go against Georgia Southern? Their only 2 losses are at Wisconsin, at James Madison. They get this game at home. I love how Davis Brin is throwing the football, and Darren Granger is not only throwing but running the football. I think you've got 2 defenses that are playing well. I think it's going to be a great game. So I'm going to leave this one up to you. Kyle, Tripp, either one of you guys have a firm opinion on this one?
Well, you
Take
see
it,
where
Kyle,
I'm leaning.
You got the shirt.
Yeah, I'm going Georgia Southern. Give me Danny Reed and them boys, the voice of the Golden Eagles, of the Georgia Southern Eagles. Give me Danny Reed. Listen on the Varsity app. Yes.
All right, Phil, let's see if you've got a lean on the other game tonight. Thursday night, 7:30 kick between Syracuse. They're on the road in Blacksburg, taking on Virginia Tech. 2 teams that seem to maybe be going in different directions right now. Virginia Tech's got a little bit of momentum. Their quarterback, Kyron Drones, he had a great game his last time out against Wake Forest, 20 of 29 for 321 yards. They won against Pitt a couple weeks back as well. Now, on the other side, Syracuse, their quarterback, Garrett Schrader, I mean, he's got to be happy just to have a winnable game in front of them this week after the stretch they're coming off of against Clemson, North Carolina, and FSU. What do you like here between the Cuse and the Hokies?
Yeah, this is a game where I do like a squad. And I tell you what, if it's Thursday night, it's Virginia Tech, it's Enter Sandman, I'll take the Hokies. I mean, they're 14-6 straight up at home on Thursday nights. You've watched it for years. And I really do think the insertion of Kyron Drones in the magazine, I called for Drones to be the starter this year. Didn't win the job at the start of the year, but now that he's in there, they're averaging about almost 400 yards per game the last 4 games, 387. So the offense is much better. Drones can run, and he's been a very capable QB. He's only tossed 1 interception since he started. I like the defense, holding opponents to 29 yards per game below their season average. And overall, I think Virginia Tech's actually the better team. So it's Thursday night, Enter Sandman. That's got to be my favorite opening of any college football team. I like Virginia Tech minus the 3 here strongly.
Yeah, I think that's got to be a bucket list item for any college football fan. Anybody who claims to be a big-time college football fan to be in Blacksburg, I haven't been. That's certainly one that I want to endure and take in. Florida Atlantic at Charlotte. 7:30 game on ESPN2 as we shift to Friday. Tom Herman against my guy, Biff Poggi. I failed to mention Charlotte last week, Phil. I promise you it was my sickos pick. I had Charlotte getting their first AAC win on the road against the Pirates. They were a pair of, I think they were both 1-5 at the time, and Charlotte just grinded out a game where they had a school record 127 yards only that they allowed defensively to the Pirates. Granted, relatively short football history, but still, Charlotte gets the win, 10-7 over the Pirates. Charlotte games have hit the under in 4 of their last 5 games. 42.5 is the total here. FAU can score some points. They scored 56 a couple of weeks ago at USF. The under is hidden 7 of 8 between these two. They've met every year since 2015. So you hear me kind of leaning under at 42.5, 42 or so. FAU is favored by 3.5, though, so you've got a home dog here, Phil. What do you think about the Niners and the Owls Friday night?
Yeah, and I would lean with the under, clearly. I mean, you look at last week, Florida Atlantic struggled against UTSA. They only had 162 yards, 12 first downs in that game. And as you mentioned, Charlotte is, you think of Charlotte, you think of a 2-5 team, but they're actually the last 4 weeks holding opponents to 288 yards per game. So they've got a legitimate defense. one that can get after the quarterback as well. I'm going to lean with Florida Atlantic in this one, though. I think the line's cheap. I would have put the number more towards 7. This is the same FAU team that just 2 weeks ago blasted USF on the road. Charlotte's actually 1-9 against the spread their last 10 home games. So I think you might get a fair price here. I like Florida Atlantic minus the 3.5.
All right, let's go to noon on Saturday. Florida State is looking to get to 8-0 for the first time in a long time, probably since that game I told you about me going to back in 2014. They're trying to do it this week in Winston-Salem, right here where me and Kyle are, taking on Wake Forest team, a Wake Forest team that surprised some people last week, even though they were, I think, favored by a point against Pitt. Seemed like everybody liked Pitt in that game. I know I did, so I missed on that one. But last week for Florida State, Jordan Travis in the second half against Duke, I'm telling you, that's the Jordan Travis FSU has to have if they're going to knock off one of these big teams at the end of the year. He was really good, 268 through the air, had 62 rushing yards too. I thought it was his best game or best half of the season so far. I like Florida State to cover here. And just a side note for you, Phil, the unders hit in 8 of the last 10 of these meetings between Wake Forest and FSU. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I actually had the record at 8-0 for the under. So, yeah, I lean with the under in this one. And, you know, if Christian Veillere last week, it sure looked like he was past the first down marker when he really started his slide. Had he slid past the first down marker like it looked like he did, Pitt wins that game outright because Wake Forest ended up getting that last second touchdown pass, which you even wonder if he caught the ball in that last second. So I'm not saying Pitt was the wrong side last week, Trip. I think Pitt was the right side.
Yep.
It just didn't win, and it was a tough situation for Pitt. But 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, this Wake Forest team did take Clemson in the wire, only lost by 5. They're pretty tough at home. They're a nice home dog. Florida State's coming off a big night game against Duke where – thank you for that good second half. I was sweating that one out. I had Florida State last week minus the points. Definitely concerned when we trailed at the half, but as you mentioned, Jordan Travis, a big second half. Riley Leonard getting injured helped as well. Duke had 35 yards offense after Leonard went out. I've got Florida State winning this one by about 20, which is where the spread is. So if I was going to play the game, I'd lean with the under, but we'll take your advice on this one, Trip, with the side.
I don't know where he gets some of his information from, Phil, but we do know the Lock Doctor is prescribing only winners. So at least he claims to on Twitter. You know, follow him at Trip Hurd. The Lock
9-2 last week. Big week for the doctor.
Wow. All right. Yeah. You can catch him too if you want more Trip. The Michael Felder Show on Fridays when he's with Stephen Hartzell. Again, College Sports Now. Subscribe wherever you podcast. I was at the last game FSU played Wake Forest in Winston 2 years ago. That was the Mackenzie Milton comeback year when he was playing for the Seminoles, and Jordan Travis was starting to get more time. Wake did win that contest. Maryland at Northwestern as we go to Big Ten country. Terps are favored by 13.5 on the road. 48.5 is the total. 12 o'clock, Big Ten Network. Second of 3 straight opponents off a bye for the Wildcats. Seems like everybody's kind of picking on Northwestern here. First Men 2017 favorite has won all 3 meetings. 2-1 ATS, though. Last 5 away games have gone under for the Terps. The unique thing here, Phil, we know about Maryland and Talia Tagovailoa and the ability to pass and what this passing game does. 2,000 yards through the air, 30th best in FBS. But Northwestern, their pass defense is pretty stout, Phil, allowing just 174 per. That's 13th best. Now, if we talk about Northwestern's ability to throw, Maryland's passing defense, they're both bottom dwellers. So what do you think about the Terps and Wildcats?
You know, you have to think Maryland with that offense off a bye can put it on Northwestern, but I actually like the Wildcats plus the points here for a couple of reasons. Sometimes when a team comes off a bye, the offense is a little flat early on, and that may be the case here. And that would just give Northwestern some life. And then Maryland also has a huge game on deck against Penn State. Now, watching Northwestern this year, I've been impressed with how gritty they are. I mean, coming into the year, once it was announced that Pat Fitzgerald was gone, a couple players transferred out, I'm thinking this team's going to win 1-2 games tops. They've already got 3 wins, and they gave Nebraska a really good game in the last game. Took that one, only losing by 8. First downs were even, yards were even in that one. So I think it's a scrappy Northwestern team that can hang within this number. They'll play ball control. try to slow down that Maryland offense. And like I said, Maryland coming off a bye may be a little slow starting. So I'll actually take Northwestern plus the points.
All right, Texas A&M is going to be a 14.5-point favorite Saturday against South Carolina. Totals at 53.5. South Carolina, the reason they're such a big underdog here is because of their defense. It's leaking like a sieve. They've given up 30-plus points in the last 4 games they played. Last week, on the other side of the ball, they had 20 first downs. I know you like to track this stuff, Phil. They only converted that into 4 field goals for 12 points. A&M's back at home. They're coming off 2 losses to Tennessee and Bama. I don't know. I think A&M's probably going to roll in this one. Who do you like?
Yeah, and take a look at A&M's losses this year. The first one was at Miami of Florida. And I think when you look at Miami at the end of the year, you're going to say, wow, that's a really good team. Home against Alabama, a game they led 17-10 at the half. And then off a big emotional effort against Alabama, they had to play Tennessee on the road, and Tennessee was fresh off a bye. And yet that thing was a close game. A&M led 10-7 at the half. A punt return for a touchdown was really the key, I think, to Tennessee winning that game by 7. So 3 losses, yes. 3 bad losses? No, I don't think so. I think A&M's still a really good team. Love their defense. They can get after the quarterback. South Carolina's allowed 31 sacks this year. That's 12.7% of the time that Rattler drops back to pass. They struggle to run the ball. They struggle to stop the run. As you mentioned, they've given up 477 yards per game the last 4 games. And last year, that was quite a loss for Texas A&M when they traveled to face South Carolina. I think South Carolina had 1 first down and yet led 17-0 because of a kick return touchdown, a defensive touchdown, and another drive set up by a turnover. The last time South Carolina traveled here to Texas A&M, the Aggies led 31-0 at the half with a 268 to 11-yard edge, won the thing 44-14. I like Texas A&M big, just like you do, Trip.
Phil, Houston and Dana Holgerson really held their own against Texas
Yes.
at home last week, overcoming a 21-0 deficit, losing in the final quarter. Quinn Ewers goes down, so we're going to have a change at quarterback for Texas. More coming up on that one in a moment. But the Cougs on the road taking on the Wildcats. Chris Kleiman's team is laying 17.5 or so. 58.5 is the total. Another 12 o'clock game on ESPN2. This is the first meeting, Phil, between Houston and Kansas State all time. There's no history to go off of between these two. K-State, impressive again, though, Phil. My goodness. They ran roughshod 41-3 over a team that played for the national championship last year.
Yeah, and, a couple interesting things here. First of all, I do think Houston gave maximum effort last week. And it's tough to give maximum effort 2 weeks in a row, especially going from home to on the road. You're looking at a Kansas State team that is 8-1 as a Big 10 or Big 12 home favorite, and they're on a 9-1 run overall as a home favorite. So I like that. Then the other thing would be, as you touched on, Kyle, Houston actually trailed 21-0 against Texas. Maybe Texas got a little overconfident. Maybe they backed off a little. But I really liked Chris Kleiman's comments after the game against TCU last week. They led 27-3 at the half in total domination. And I did not expect that. I thought it was going to be a good game. They had a 416 yards in the first half of that game, 416 to 122-yard edge. But after the game was over, he said he wasn't impressed with how his team finished the game. They only won 41-3. That makes me think they're not going to let up if they get up on Houston. I like what they're doing at quarterback. Remember, Will Howard is a very good QB, but they've now been playing Avery Johnson, the true freshman, right? PS number 9 quarterback, or number 9 rated quarterback out of high school. It's been quite a dynamite offense with those two both in there. So I think you have a Kansas State team in a good situation, a solid home favorite. I like K-State to win this one by over 3 touchdowns.
Phil, you've had a pretty good beat on Boston College here in the last couple of weeks. You had them last week over Georgia Tech, week before that against Army. This week they're back at home. They're taking on Yukon, a team that may have just turned the light switch off. I don't know. They're going to need a miracle if they could make a bowl game this year. But Boston College, big number, 14.5. They haven't been this big of a favorite since last year in week 3 when they took on Maine. So it's a lot of points. I would like it a lot better if it was 13.5 under that little 2 touchdown mark, but 14.5, maybe still a slight lean with Boston College. They're also on a streak. They've hit the over in every single game they played this year. They're 7-0. If it goes over 51.5 this week, I think we have to at least talk about them in the Phil Steele Bowl.
Yeah, I tell you what, I actually did not know that. I don't pay as close attention to totals as I do the sides. I'm more about the matchups and things like that. So I'm going to keep that in mind, Trip. So yeah, I think you can look to the over. Let me take a look at what I predicted for the my newsletter inside the press box. I got a 35-17. What's the total?
51.5.
Okay, it's right there. But I'll keep that in mind for future weeks. I appreciate that. But as far as this matchup goes, UConn started out slow last year and still made a bowl game. Now they're back to the wall. They lose one more, they're done. I thought they played a good game last week against USF. Taquan Roberson, the Penn State transfers, having a decent year at QB. But I do like what I'm seeing out of Boston College. And then after the game was over, Castellanos, the QB, they were talking to him. And he was basically came out and said, our goal is 9-3. This isn't a team that's saying, hey, I hope we can cobble something together and get to be bowl eligible this year. This is a team thinking that they can be 9-3 at the end of the year. So I think we've got a very confident Boston College team. I agree with you in the fact it's rare air for them being this big of a favorite. I agree with you 100% that 13.5 would be a much better number than 14.5. Like I said, I've got the game at 15 or 18, I should say, 35-17. So a slight lean with Boston College. Would have had a bigger lean had they been 13.5. Very good assessment there, Trip.
For those that are watching on the Varsity Channel on YouTube, I'm holding up the magazine again. The most comprehensive preview magazine for close to 30 years now. PhilSteele.com for more information. There's still time. So much critical, valuable information in there. Information about Phil Steele Plus as well, valued at $99. Go online. Again, updated for all 133 teams after every game. All the information you need. Bet smarter, not harder. Be more like Phil Steele. A lot of color-coded items, too. 30, 40 years worth of data, even going back to the 70s, that is available for you. So certainly the tool that everyone needs for their college football weekend. PhilSteele.com for more info on Phil Steele Plus. Phil, before we get to the meat of the afternoon schedule, there's Clemson at NC State. Not as much shine on this one as we've had in previous years. The Textile Bowl, as it's called, and Clemson blowing a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter to a backup Miami quarterback and then losing in 2 overtimes during week 8, 28-20. State is off a bye. MJ Morris looks to be that dude now at quarterback for the Wolfpack. What do you think?
Yeah, I do like MJ Morris. I think he is an upgrade over Brennan Armstrong, like what he did last year. They struggled a little bit against Duke. It wasn't MJ Morris's fault, but only 3 points against Duke concerns me. And once again, you look at Clemson and you look at their losses. And, the Duke and Florida State games, they had a combined 51-34 first down edge, somehow lost. And as you pointed out very correctly, Kyle, that game looked locked up and sealed last week, leading by 10 in the fourth quarter with Miami down to their backup quarterback. Somehow, some way they lost it. Those are 3 unbelievably tough losses for Clemson this year, a team that came in with much higher expectations. So I have to wonder, what's their mental state? Now, if Clemson comes out and plays the right game, I think they can go on the road and get this one and cover. I'm going to stay away from this one. I think Clemson is a team, I got to see what they have left and how they react to last week's loss and having 3 losses this year.
Yeah, Phil, I failed to mention the spread. It's actually pretty big, too. I think 10.5 for Clemson. I'd stay away from that, too. I would run quickly away from the Tigers and the Wolfpack. 2 o'clock in Raleigh between NC State and Clemson.
All right, let's get into the 3:30 window with basically an elimination game at Rice-Eccles Stadium. This will be one of the most heavily betted games of the weekend. Number 8, Oregon at 13th ranked Utah. Both teams 6-1 straight up coming into this one. The Ducks are favored by 6.5. Totals at 47.5. I mean, any chances of making the college football playoff for either one of these teams really rides on this game. I think Oregon's the more complete team, second-ranked offense in the country with Bo Nix at the controls, 47 points per game. They've got a top 20 defense. But, Phil, we know how hard it is to win in Salt Lake City. What do you like here?
Yeah, I do think Oregon's a better team. In fact, my average game grades, which we have on Phil Steele Plus, still rate Oregon the number 1 team in the country. Keep in mind that loss against Washington, they had a 541 to 415-yard edge, a 32 to 4 or 32 to 24 first down edge, and that was in Husky Stadium, for crying out loud. This is a really, really good Oregon team, but I don't bet against Utah in Rice-Eccles Stadium. I mean, the one time they've lost since I think 2019 at home was in 2020 when it was COVID and didn't have the home crowd. With the home crowd, they're practically unbeatable at home. I had USC over Utah last week. Didn't win with that. Sione Vaki, the safety who's now playing offense, had a fantastic game, not only running the ball, but receiving. Bryson Barnes is now the clear-cut quarterback. I think that's good for them. And defensively, they're holding opponents to 112 yards per game below their season average, number 3 in the country. I think Oregon's a better team, could somehow come out of there with the win. But frankly, I am surprised by the line. I would have put Oregon maybe a 3-point favorite. I'm surprised it's 6.5, so I got to side with the home dog here.
Yeah, it seems tall. Duke is catching 4 on the road at 18th ranked Louisville, 3:30 on ESPN. Just the 4th meeting ever between these two. Duke has never beaten the Cardinals. So that's back-to-back weeks now. They're playing a team that they have never beaten. Now 0-22 against Florida State all time. They're 0-3 against Louisville. And Phil, let me tell you, most Duke people quickly forgot the last time these two teams got together in 2021. I was on the board running it for the Blue Devil Sports Network. It was a Thursday night game. Louisville scored touchdowns on 9 of 10 possessions. And then it was a punt on the other one. The final score was 62-22. I mean, it was a massacre, but the Blue Devils were able to rack up almost 500 yards of offense. They just couldn't stop Louisville from scoring. Malik Cunningham had become the second FBS. I'm giving a history lesson. Malik Cunningham had become the second FBS player with 300 passing yards, 200 rushing yards on just 11 carries in a game, and he sat out most of the fourth quarter. Now, these are two very different teams, but I think Duke is very different without a healthy Riley Leonard as well, as we saw last week. And I don't know if starting Riley Leonard at Florida State, Phil, did them a disservice, where maybe it gave them a shot in the arm, but it broke their spirit at the same time in the second half, not able to have him, and they didn't learn how to play without him throughout that first half when they were able to lean on their defense. So what do you think of Duke at Louisville? The Cardinals are seeking a 9th straight win at home.
Yeah, and the last time Louisville played, I called it a situational play on Pitt and said Pitt had a really good chance at the outright upset, which they got. In that game, though, Louisville did have a 28-13 first down edge, 444 to 268 yard edge, came up short. Then they had a bye. Now they're at home, fresh, ready, off a loss. I like that. Duke, meanwhile, just had a massive night game at Florida State, which I had to get fired up for. You summed it up correctly. And after Riley Leonard went out, they had 35 yards the rest of the game. And now they've got to go on the road. Does Riley Leonard play? Will he be playing the entire game? I wonder. And now you've got a Duke team that's coming off a loss, traveling again, another tough game. This one, I think the spread's a little cheap. I like Louisville minus the 4.
All right, let's talk cocktail party. We've got top-ranked Georgia taking on Florida. The Dogs are a 14.5-point favorite this time around. A lot of people are saying, do we really think Georgia's still the best team, especially now that they're going to be without Brock Bowers for some amount of time? And don't look now, but Graham Mertz is completing 76% of his passes. He's got big game experience from his years in the Big Ten. The Dogs can turn up a little more pressure, though, than Vanderbilt or South Carolina. Phil, I really don't know where to lean on this game. I'm not making a pick until I hear what you have to say.
This one is sort of what you talked about earlier, Trip, and sometimes those half points can be very valuable. It's 14.5. I know coming in, I was thinking Georgia by 10 to 14, but once you put it over 14, I'm going to lean with Florida. Now, the negative would be if Georgia takes this game like an A game, like they did against Kentucky, and says, hey, people are saying we can't win without Brock Bowers. Let's go out and show them. And the same Florida team that showed up on the road against Kentucky, or the same Florida team that showed up on the road against Utah shows up here, then you're in trouble with that particular wager. But, it was surprising. We were having a meeting among some of the guys in the office here going over some of the games and getting everybody's input. And I'm like, hey, Florida's 5-2. I mean, with all the negative talk about Florida, they're actually 5-2 this year. They are good at the line of scrimmage. They play good defense. As you mentioned, Graham Mertz hitting 76%. Just a couple of weeks ago, you're like, woe is Florida. They're coming off that loss to Kentucky. Will they fire their head coach? I think Florida does give Georgia a game. I would take the 14.5. Would it be one of my strongest plays? You can go broke betting against Georgia, especially away from the Sanford Stadium. But I'm leaning with Florida plus the 14.5.
I can tell you a lot of Georgia people are concerned, are worried. Their antennas are up with the world's largest outdoor cocktail party looming this weekend. I don't think we're supposed to refer to it that way, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Phil, I know you are. So we are traditionalists. You're going to have to come and wire our jaws shut if you want us to not refer to it in that manner. Pitt at number 14, Notre Dame. Fighting Irish are laying 20.5 off a bye. 44.5 is the total, 3:30 on NBC. Phil, you kind of sort of handicapped already Pitt's effort against Louisville a couple of moments ago. This is the 73rd meeting all-time between these two. First visit by Pitt since a 1914 Notre Dame win when they were ranked 5th nationally back in 2018. Irish won 45-3 in 2020 at Heinz Field. 30-game ACC regular season win streak was snapped 2 weeks ago at Louisville. It all comes full circle. Now it's Pitt and Notre Dame Saturday at 3:30.
Yeah, and I find it tough to pick against either of these two teams. You guys know how high I am on Notre Dame this year. They could easily have beaten Ohio State at home, and they've got the run game. They've got Sam Hartman. They've got the defense. They've got the special teams. They're coming off a bye. They do have Clemson on deck, and while Clemson's not a highly ranked team, believe me, you get prepared for Clemson because they're a team that is much better than its final record, and that game's in Death Valley for crying out loud. And with Pitt, I might just be going against trips Florida State next week with this Pitt team because I think they have the potential to play, but this is a road game. They're off of a tough loss against Wake, and they've got a big game against Florida State at home. So I'm pretty much staying away from this one. Once again, I'm going to offer it to you two. Who's got the stronger feeling on this game? You pick it.
Trip, go. Come on, I'm taking the Irish.
A lot of points.
Give me the 20.5.
I'm staying away.
Oh, did Phil put you under the microscope? You're not even going to pick a side? Come on. Don't be soft.
All right, you took the Pitt. Fine.
Give me There you go. There you go.
Play of the week.
We'll do some
nothing I like better.
We'll do some push-ups on that one. Why don't you tell Phil what you and Hartzell have going on for your Friday show, what the gamble is?
Okay, so me and Hartzell on Fridays, we do a 3-for-all. We take 3 picks against the spread every week. Right now, I'm up by a couple of games, but the loser at the end of the year has to get in a full-blown Masters caddy outfit and caddy for the other guy for 18 holes.
Wow. That'll be interesting. But at least you're winning so far.
Right now. Trying to keep it going this week. All right, next up, we've got BYU on the road at 7th-ranked Texas. Quinn Ewers is out for the Longhorns. The backup, Malik Murphy, and we've also heard the Arch Manning story swirling around right now. Not sure who they're going to play at quarterback, but whoever they do play, the best plan might be to just turn around, hand the ball to Jonathan Brooks, and let him go to work. It's a big spread here, 18.5. Who do you like, Phil?
I definitely like Texas in this one. I have something I call the quarterback injury system, which is when you get a major player out like Quinn Ewers. 3 things happen. First of all, the team rallies around him, plays a lot harder. Second thing is the backup is generally not a huge drop-off. And when you look at Malik Murphy, this guy was one of the top-rated quarterbacks out of high school. He actually has the strongest arm on the team. Stronger arm than yours, stronger arm than Manning. That's a good sign. And then the third thing is the line drops. And this line should have been over 21. It's not. When you look at BYU, yeah, they're 5-2, but you talk about a smoke and mirrors team. I mean, they're being outgained by 95 yards per game. They can't run the football. They're averaging 2.8 yards per carry. That means you're putting on Keaton Slovis against this defense on the road. He's got to go and beat them or stay within shouting distance. I think we get an A-game effort from Texas this week. I like Texas minus the points over BYU, and I do look for Malik Murphy to have a big game. To me, there's no question who the number 2 quarterback is. It's Malik Murphy this year.
Texas actually trails that series all time, too. They've played 5 times. BYU has won 4 of them. Last one, 41-7 in Austin in 2014. But, yeah, these are 2 different teams today. I did not realize, Phil, Steve Sarkisian was actually a quarterback for BYU.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm showing my age, but he was an All-American quarterback. Led him to a number 5 ranking, Cotton Bowl victory. So, unique little tie there between the Cougars and the Longhorns. New Big 12 member against outgoing Big 12 member. 24th ranked USC is trying to avoid their first 3-game losing streak since 2021. Could it be the final weekender between these two teams? Southern Cal playing at Cal. Most played opponent for USC, 110th meeting overall. Cal was off a bye, lost 42-7 at home to UCLA. Their last time out, we know USC losing on the final play of the game, something that hadn't happened in nearly a decade against Utah last week. And then the South Bend debacle where Caleb Williams, again, has struggled and continued. Those struggles continued a bit against the Utes, but you expect that against a physically demanding defense that's going to try and grind you out and slow the game down the way Notre Dame and Utah did. So maybe, Phil, Cal could be the best medicine. The lock doctor might know more, but Cal might be the best medicine for this USC team to get up off the mat.
Yeah, and I think if you look at this game talent-wise, USC should be at least a 14-point favorite. I mean, look at Cal's defense. Normally under Justin Wilcox, they're really good. They're giving up 476 yards per game the last 4 games, 69% completions. They don't have an overwhelming offense. They have 3 quarterbacks, Finley, Jackson, and then Mendoza has been playing as well. They're completing 54% of their passes, and they don't really have the dominant run game. Jay Knott is very good at running back, but I think USC's defense will have a feel-good game this week. My main concern would be if you take a look at USC and you look at them over the last 6 weeks of the season, at Notre Dame, home to Utah, at Cal, Washington, at Oregon, UCLA. What is the least important game out of this 6-game stretch? It would be this one. Now, coming off a loss might help out their odds a little bit, but this is another game I think I'm going to stay away from because I think USC has the potential, if they play to their level, to win this one by 2 touchdowns or more, but it's also a pretty tough situation.
Talk about a team that played to its potential. Virginia last week. They shocked the world in Chapel Hill, first ever road win over a top 10 opponent. This week, they're on the road again, taking on Miami. The Hurricanes, an 18.5-point favorite this week. They had a nice weekend last week, too, with the win over Clemson in overtime. I don't think UVA is going to have the same success on offense this week. I'm not sure if Miami is going to cover. You like picks, Kyle? I got one here. I want the under 46.5. What do you like here, Phil? Can Miami cover? You like the over? You like the under? What you got?
Yeah, I can definitely handle the under there. So I would agree with you on that. I mean, Virginia's playing decent defense over the last 4 weeks, holding opponents to 64 yards per game below their season average. Miami, over the last 4 weeks, holding teams to 94 yards below their season average. So you got 2 good defenses. I think if you're Virginia, you come into this with a conservative game plan, which, I like the fact that Tony Muskett's back at quarterback. They're playing better. Miami's a better team. They could easily win this by 3 touchdowns, but they're just not a team I trust as a big favorite. So large favorite coming off an upset win. I got to lean with Virginia plus the points in this. I'll take Miami to win this by about 14.
Let's talk about the other Miami, Ohio. It's the battle of the bricks as they go on the road to take on Ohio. They'll be in Athens. Bobcats have won 13 of 16 in this rivalry, 10-5-1 against the spread. How do you project this one, Phil, between Miami and Ohio?
Yeah, and Ohio in the regular season is on a nice 11-1 against the spread run, so you got to like that. You've got an Ohio team that has sort of been going through the motions the last couple of weeks. This is the game that decides the MAC East title. They need to win this. And then last week, Miami got down to Toledo's 21-3 at the half, started to make a comeback, but then Brett Gabbert got injured, and he's out for the year now. So Avion Smith, who started quite a few games for him last year, will start here. But Avion Smith started last year against Ohio, and that's a game they lost 37-21, and that one was at home. This is a big game for Ohio. I think they play their best game of the year. This is the game that puts them in the MAC championship game. Better defense. Both teams have good defenses. Better offense, and we've got the quarterback with Curtis Rourke hitting 63%, 9 touchdowns this year. I like Ohio, and I like them by more than the touchdown.
Another plug for Phil, philsteele.com. Inside the press box, he'll have game-by-game predictions on every single one of these games each and every week. Computer predictions, statistical breakdowns, it's all there. Get more information about Inside the Press Box at philsteele.com. Ohio favored by a touchdown and the hook. 39.5 was the over-under from Miami, Ohio. Phil knows his MAC stuff. 3:30 CBS Sports Network on Saturday. Trip.
Next up, we've got Wyoming on the road at Boise State. Boise State has 4 losses this year combined by 14 points. They've had a chance to win each of those games. And they've also dominated this series against Wyoming. In the last 10, they're 9-1 straight up, 7-3 against the spread. Both these teams are coming off a bye here, but with bowl implications, you think Boise State maybe needs it a little bit more. They're favored by 5. What you like here, Phil?
Yeah, actually, Wyoming, I'm looking at Phil Steele plus right now because something you said there. Yes, Boise has dominated the series straight up, 7-1, but Wyoming is actually 7-1 against the spread the last 8 games. So Wyoming has usually kept it close. So I'm looking at that right now. So scribble out that thing you had there about Boise dominating the game spread wise.
Come on, Trip, do better, Trip.
We're checking right now.
But the straight up record is 100%. And when you look at this matchup, you hit on it. I mean, Boise is desperate. They are 3-4. The Colorado State game, they blew a 3-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. The Memphis game, they could have won on the road. The UCF game, they could have won at home. The Washington game's the only game they didn't have a chance in. And Wyoming's been sort of I've used Wyoming quite a bit this year. Called for upsets over Texas Tech and Fresno. They delivered both times. I do think Boise's a better team at home, desperate. I've got Boise by 4. The line's 5. So another one I'm going to stay away from. I think but Boise should be able to come out with the straight up win. And if the series plays out like it has, then Wyoming gets to win ATS.
Phil, you're right on that too. I had it backwards.
You can't read your own handwriting. Come on.
And I'm going to tell you something. I'm very impressed. We're throwing 30 games a week at you, and you catch that one. I mean, I'm saying that's a good catch.
Thank you, Trip. I appreciate that.
Well, it's why he's the Godfather. Come on, he's the unicorn. He's the man, the myth, the legend himself. He's going to tell us about our final afternoon delight, 3:30 contest on ESPN Plus. Now, before we jump to the evening slate, Phil, with Southern Miss at Appalachian State, the Mountaineers are given 17. I'm seeing 55.5 is the total. Again, a 3:30 game. The unique thing with these two teams, Phil. Again, I was at the last home game when they lost to Coastal on a walk-off field goal in Boone. So App State returns home. I mean, they've lost more games than what this fan base is accustomed to, at least in modern memory. Maybe you go back their entire proud program history, to their FCS days. One number I had gleamed or pulled from, and this kind of casts a poor light on the head coach, Sean Clark, but it is what it is. Clark has lost 17 games now as the head coach in 3.5 seasons. In 6 years before that, and you're looking at Scott Satterfield, you're looking at Eli Drinkowitz, they had combined to lose just 17 games. So, I mean, that's pretty revealing itself there. These are two fan bases, Phil, in poor headspaces is what I'm getting at. For Southern Miss, it's for similar reasons, but again, they're coming off a 55-3 national television blowout embarrassment to South Alabama last Tuesday. So I have no idea how this one's going to go. 17 seems big, but we know Southern Miss might be among the worst FBS teams in America. I told you last week I'd take Sam Houston State, who's now 0-8 on a neutral field, but Southern Miss has not even won an FBS game this year. Third meeting ever, first as Sun Belt opponents, Southern Miss and App State. Yeah,
and it's tough to get last week out of your mind if you watch the Southern Miss game, because at the half, South Alabama had a 402 to 26-yard edge. I mean, was there a good play for Southern Miss in the first half? I think they had two good plays. The rest of the half was just absolutely dominated by South Alabama. Now, you touched on with App State, I would guarantee out of those 17 losses, at least half of them have been as a favorite. So this is an App State team that has not lived up to its potential the last couple of years, but they do have Joey Aguirre. They're in a must-win situation. They're at home, and they've got the perfect elixir here in Southern Miss. Now, I will say this, Southern Miss, the weeks prior to last week's blowout, did give Old Dominion a game. They played decent against Texas State, put up 510 yards, gave Arkansas State a game, even only lost to Tulane by 18. But right now, you got to wonder where the head is. Are they really listening to the head coach? Because you got to think Will Hall is on a major hot seat here. I got to go with App State minus the points in this one.
All right, let's jump to the primetime portion of the Saturday slate. Ohio State's going to be on the road at Wisconsin. The Buckeyes favored by 14.5. Ohio State's won 9 straight over Wisconsin. They'll go into Camp Randall Again, a 2-touchdown favorite. Could be a situational play here if you like what the Wisconsin side. Ohio State's coming off a big win over Penn State. That was maybe it's a letdown spot for the Buckeyes. They blew out the Badgers last year, so there's another little revenge factor. But, Wisconsin, they had to come from behind last week against Illinois, so the Ohio State defense is going to be much tougher than what they saw last week. I don't know. It's kind of a tough one for me. It's a lot of points to cover on the road at Wisconsin, but I kind of like that Ohio State defense.
Yeah, and 2 weeks ago, one of my top 3 plays that we give out at the end of the show was Ohio State over Purdue. They crushed them. Then last week I had the under in Ohio State, Penn State, which was an easy winner. I may just have this one on there. In fact, I think I will. It's I actually like Wisconsin. I do agree with you situationally. It is worrisome. Ohio State has my number 1 rated defense. They're holding opponents to 119 yards per game, below their season average. But I'll go back to last week. Ryan Day was actually calling out the home crowd saying, hey, we need you guys to be super loud. This is a huge game. We've got to win this. And they won it. It is a letdown spot. And there's a head coach over there for Wisconsin, Luke Fickell. You may know of him. He was the interim head coach for Ohio State 1 year. You got to think this game is very special to him. While they lost their quarterback, Tanner Mordecai, 2 weeks ago, keep in mind, Tanner Mordecai only had 3 touchdown passes on the year. Braden Locke threw for 2 touchdown passes last week. So I don't think Braden Locke is a major step down from Mordecai. They still have Braylon Allen. They have a defense that's getting better. And I think situationally is a big advantage to Wisconsin. I like the fact it's over 14 at 14.5. We're taking Wisconsin plus 14.5, and I'm going to mention them at the end of the show.
Yeah, I know that guy, Luke Fickell. Wisconsin's last win in the series was over number 1 Ohio State at the time, back in 2010. So third-ranked Buckeyes this time coming to Camp Randall. They will be jumping around. There's no doubt about that. Fifth-ranked Washington is laying 26.5 on the road at Stanford, 7 o'clock on FS1. This is the only true road game of the month here in October. A little misleading because they remain on the road next week when they go to play Southern Cal, Phil. But, Phil, let me tell you, I might have been one of the few East Coasters. I know you were locked in, but it was very tantalizing, very entertaining watching that entire second half. I was glued to my television. I was up late watching. I thought Arizona State was going to win that game last week. One of my favorite players now for the Sun Devils is Cam Scatabo. I mean, that guy has tree trunks for legs. If we were doing an all-Shas team, he would be my number 1 selection, okay? Cam Scatabo is right there as a Shas All-American. I mean, that was intense. However, they didn't have a place kicker that would be able to put the Huskies away. You get the pick 6. It changes their fortunes. Somehow Washington found a way to win. So what do you think about their opportunity, their efforts going on the road to cover 26.5 now? Turnovers a big issue a week ago. 61 is the total, 7 o'clock on FS1 on the Farm.
Yeah, and actually wasn't the place kicker. He said he didn't have enough offensive linemen on his special teams unit to make sure that the kick wasn't blocked. So if people are wondering why up 7-6, a chance to take a 4-point lead late, and then, of course, on 4th down, throw the, 90-yard interception return for a touchdown.
Oh, it turns my stomach upside down.
Bailed Washington out big time. Now, I don't think we're going to see that Washington this week. Keep in mind, last week was a letdown situation coming off Oregon. Playing Arizona State, a game you're expected to win. Everybody patting him on the back. Michael Penix's going to win the Heisman Trophy. He had all that stuff going for him. Now, earlier this summer, or in this summer, I should say, I did a blog on philsteele.com talking about the Pac-12. I referred to it as the Big Six, Little Six, and it's pretty much just stayed true to form this year. There are 6 really strong teams in the Pac-12, and then there's the other guys. Well, if you look how Stanford has done against the Big Six teams, they lost to USC by 46. They lost to Oregon by 36. They lost to UCLA by 35. Spread is under that, and Washington's just as good as each of those teams. I don't think we have to worry about the crowd noise here, and I don't think after last week's narrow escape, they're going to have any trouble being motivated right from the jumps in this one. So I actually like Washington minus the points over Stanford here.
All right, Phil, let's talk Air Force, Colorado State. Air Force ranked 19th in the country. They're on the road for their second week in a row. Last week, we thought Zach Larrier was going to be out. He ended up playing. They didn't do a lot on offense outside of that 194-yard passing touchdown he had. It was pretty quiet outside of that. Now, Colorado State almost knocked off UNLV. As soon as I bring up UNLV on the show, they almost go up and fall on their face. So that's on me. That's not their fault. But pretty big spread here, 13.5. You think the Falcons can cover?
Yeah, and if this game was being played in September, I would probably have Air Force favored by about 14. They really are an undefeated team capable of being that January 1 bowl squad. You look at the rest of their schedule: Colorado State, Army, Hawaii, UNLV, Boise State. The Boise State game will be a crucial one at the end of the year, but they've got an excellent defense. Number 4 in the country, holding opponents to 109 yards per game below their season average. As you mentioned, last week they only had 9 first downs. A 95-yard pass was key, but they were playing a service academy, and service academies against service academies, as you know, you go under because they didn't know how to defense it. Colorado State's got one player that would be of concern, would be Braden Fowler-Nicolsley, who at quarterback can make the big play. He's got 15 touchdowns. He also has 11 interceptions. But to me, the key to this game is the situation. I have never seen a service academy have a game lodged between 2 other service academies. They actually played Navy later than usual this year, and they got Army next week. You can't tell me that this game is a major focus for Air Force. So I got to take Colorado State plus the points at home. I think they stay within the number just because Air Force is in between Navy and Army, a very unusual situation.
I just love playing the highlight from Jim Arthur, radio voice for Air Force, on College Football Saturday night over the weekend, losing his mind, making a CFSN debut on the longest pass in Air Force history. That was incredible. Again, all these hometown broadcasts you can get on the Varsity Network app. Make sure you download that from the App Store. Number 21, Tennessee at Kentucky, 7 o'clock on ESPN. This is the 6th straight time that these teams are meeting in the night slate. 80th consecutive meeting. Overall, at least consecutively, overall, it's 119th for these two teams. But Tennessee has dominated this series all time. They blew a 27 lead, though, at Alabama, leading at halftime, and then the Crimson Tide blew the doors off the Vols. How does Tennessee rebound, and will it be in a way where they can cover the small point total? 4, they're only favored by. 51 is the total at UK.
Yeah, the number at 4 is good. The situation favors Kentucky naturally, fresh off a bye at home, catching Tennessee off a big game against Alabama. But I tell you what, the series history really has me siding with Tennessee in this one. When they've played in Lexington, Tennessee is actually still 18-2. That's unusual for a road team to be that dominant. So, and you go back to, you take a look at this game last year, it wasn't much of a game. Tennessee led 27-6 at the half, won at 44-6 at home. They cannot afford another loss. They have 2 losses on the year already. Kentucky lost to Missouri in their last home game by 17. They got their doors blown off by Georgia. So even though the situation sets up well for Kentucky, I like Tennessee minus the points. I think they're the better team, and they've proven they can win here in Lexington.
All right, last year, JMU got ranked. They lost their next 3 games. They're hoping this year it's a little bit of a different story. It's going to have to be if they're going to stay in the Phil Steele Bowl. They're coming off a good win over Marshall, but Old Dominion is their opponent this week. They're coming off a good win of their own over App State. It's a big number, JMU by 20.5. What do you like here, Phil?
Where are we playing the Phil Steele Bowl, by the way?
It's got to be Cleveland, right?
Yeah, we decided on Cleveland. Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Let's do it. Let's take a look at this matchup. I love what ODU did last week. They showed a lot of guts getting past App State at home. They scoring a late touchdown. It was 21-21. I think they had 3 drives without a first down, then drive down, scored a touchdown, and win the game. They won at Southern Miss 2 weeks ago. They're just a team where, how's Ricky Ronnie doing this? I mean, you look at their talent at the start of the year, you figure out their season, you're like, okay, they're done. They can't make a bowl game like 2 years ago, and then all of a sudden they're in a bowl game, and here they've got a great chance at 4-3. But I ain't going against James Madison. I mean, James Madison is just a team that is strong at the line of scrimmage. And I just haven't seen rush defense numbers like what you just cannot run the ball on James Madison. They're giving up 36 yards per game on the ground, 1.2 yards per carry. And that's really what ODU has to do to be successful. I don't think Grant Wilson and Jack Shields are going to light them up throwing the football. They're only hitting 54% this year. And the key stat I look at is not only is James Madison not giving up any rush yards whatsoever, but on the season they have 34 sacks. Their guy last week had 5 sacks in the game. He's got 13.5 on the season. They're taking on an offensive line that's given up 37 sacks this year. That's one sack. They're giving up sacks on 21% of the time that they drop back. So I think that's going to be a key. It's night. It's at home. It's Halloween weekend. We're going to see an enthused crowd. I got to keep going with James Madison minus the points here. They've been very impressive.
All right, Phil, we're hitting the home stretch here. We're going to run through some of these final games as quickly as we can, then get to your power plays. My boy, Cam Scatterbull, and the Sun Devils are catching, 6 points at home against Washington State, 8 o'clock, Pac-12 Network. Cougs have won 4 of 5 in this series with 3-2 ATS.
I'm going to give a commercial on this one, Kyle. On my Phil Steele Plus Tour with selections, which is 11-3 the last 3 weeks, this is my top play on there. It's the first one. So check it out. I'll give you a complete analysis on the game, show you the pages, and give you a complete breakdown.
And go on to Twitter on X at PhilSteele042, and you'll see him tweet a link for those selections and the YouTube tour. That coming up later this week. Friday.
It's up right now.
It's available right now at PhilSteele042. Make sure you go there. All right, Tripp, where are we going?
All right, let's go to the ACC. North Carolina trying to bounce back. They're on the road this week at Georgia Tech. The Hills favored by 11.5. Now, situationally, I think this is supposed to be a good spot for UNC. They're trying to bounce back after a terrible loss last week. Mac Brown, the offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey, they both said we should have got the ball to Hampton more. They're running back, and they probably should have. It's also a revenge spot for UNC. They lost to Georgia Tech last year, 21-17. I just don't know if we can trust UNC. What do you like, Phil?
Yeah, I like North Carolina in this one. Couple of reasons. First of all, Georgia Tech, you go back and look at that Miami of Florida game. Prior to them not taking a knee, Miami of Florida had a 453, 175-yard edge. That's over 2-1 in the yardage edge. It's a Georgia Tech team that got rolled over by Boston College last week. So I think they're definitely beatable. North Carolina has 3 things going for them. First of all, they're off a loss. I like to play good teams off a loss. And by the way, Mac Brown's lost some of the games as a double-digit favorite. Only twice has he been a double-digit favorite the next week. He's covered both of those, and that's the situation here. You talked about revenge. Not only lose last year, they lost the last time they traveled there to Georgia Tech. So we are getting an A game for North Carolina, off a loss with revenge. And who's on deck? Campbell. I don't even know if they know where Campbell is located. So we are talking about North Carolina minus the points over Georgia Tech here. I like the situation.
Oh, the Fighting Campbells, Phil. Final one before we go chasing. Cincinnati at Oklahoma State. The Pokes are favored by 7.5, 53 the total, 8 o'clock on ESPN2. Talk about 2 teams going in opposite directions. OK State has found something, now 3 wins in a row. The Bearcats haven't won since week 2. That's 5 straight losses for Scott Satterfield and company. Second mention for Scott Satterfield, part of the Week 9 Phil Steele show. Cowboys and Bearcats, Phil, first meeting since 1983. Pokes have won 2 of 3 overall.
Yeah, and Oklahoma State was 2-2, coming off a loss to Iowa State, South Alabama. They were miserable. I called for them to upset Kansas State. They did. They upset Kansas. They upset West Virginia. They've got the momentum. You look at the rest of their schedule, the only game they're going to be an underdog in is Oklahoma. This is an Oklahoma State team that's on the rise. And what's been the difference? It's been quarterback. The first 3 games, they were using 3 different quarterbacks. Alan Bowman is now the full-cut starter at QB. Ollie Gordon is at running back. I love watching Ollie Gordon run. I think he had 200 and some odd, 290 yards last week. He was almost unstoppable. And the Bearcats have been losing some crucial home games in Big 12 play. They're actually 0-5. Frankly, it's another game where I'm surprised that the line is only 7.5. I like Oklahoma State minus the points.
Yeah, Ollie Gordon, 282 yards on 29 carries, an average of 9.7 per rip against West Virginia, and 4 touchdowns along of 53. I mean, that guy is an absolute dog. All right, we're playing from behind. We got some catching up to do. We need to make things happen, Phil. We're going to do so with UNLV at Fresno State. First up out of the gate as we go chasing. UNLV got bowl eligible last week, and they did so behind the leg of their super senior place kicker, Jose Pisano. 25-23 at 6 field goals, set a school record. I don't know what Barry Odom and the Running Rebels are putting in the water out there, but they are bowl eligible, if you will, through 7 games. And Odom is first to win 6 of 7 at UNLV since 1973. We've kind of forgotten about Fresno State, though, Phil, since the loss to Wyoming. They're also 6-1. Should be a fantastic Mountain West showdown with the Bulldogs laying 7.5.
Yeah, here's a great stat for you. You got 2 6-1 teams, right? How many wins do these teams have combined over teams with winning records this year? The answer is 0. So there's one of them is going to actually beat a team with a winning record this week. I think the two teams are fairly close. I haven't been blown away with Fresno the last few weeks. I do think UNLV is playing well. Whether it's Maeva or Brumfield at quarterback, they're fine. The defense is playing decent. I'm going to take the points in this one. I think it comes down to the wire, probably decided by a field goal. Two really good teams.
All right, one last game on the docket. I'll probably be in a Miller-like coma by the time this thing kicks off, just shy of midnight. But San Jose State taking on Hawaii. San Jose, they've covered in 5 of their last 6, so a nice little streak going there. The total of this game is 61.5, and I do think there could be some points here, Phil. Do you have a lean in this one?
Yeah, I do. I like San Jose. If you go back and take a look at San Jose, they opened up the season 1-5, right? Who would they lose to? USC, Oregon State, the best team in the MAC, Toledo, an undefeated Air Force, and Boise State on the blue turf. Now, you throw a lot of teams into that situation, you're going to lose. I mentioned when they played New Mexico that now that they're stepping down in level of competition, look out for these guys. And it didn't look good in the first half against New Mexico. They actually trailed 17-14. Then they beat them 35-10 in the second half, won by 28. Last week, they blew out Utah State, beat them by 21. I think you're going to see this the rest of the year. It wouldn't surprise me if San Jose runs the table the rest of the year. They don't play anyone near as tough as the teams they took on at the start of the year. And with Hawaii, it's still a rebuilding year for Timmy Chang. They have a defense that's given up in Mountain West play, 5.4 yards per carry. I like San Jose State, and I'm going to pick San Jose State until they actually don't cover. One of my favorite theories in gambling is play on a streak. You can win many times and you only lose only once. So let's keep riding these Spartans.
All right, Phil, you've revealed one of your power plays for the week. Go ahead and summarize that and your 2 additional favorite plays here on Week 9.
Yeah, Wisconsin plus the points. We talked about Kansas State, how tough they are at home. I like them. And then a game we didn't talk about, on the Phil Steele Plus Tour, I'm 11-3 the last 3 weeks. The only team I've lost with, or one team that's given me 2 losses, is Auburn. Last week they didn't cover by a half a point. But I'm going to come in with Auburn here on the show this week. I think Auburn is in a good situation. They had a bye 2 weeks ago. They're not as banged up as Arkansas was. And I like Jordan Hare. I think Auburn wins this one by more than the 6.5.
Love it. In Auburn, they are at home against Mississippi State, a 3:30 SEC Network game. There it is, Phil's favorite plays. His power plays for the week. You talked me into the under FAU in Charlotte. I'm going with the under there of 43. That game played on Friday night. I'm going with Georgia Southern. I'm wearing the polo. I have to. It's +1 now. The Eagles, 1-point underdog at home against Georgia State in a series that's been dominated by the Panthers. And then finally, Trip had me moving in this direction. Give me North Carolina. I'm going to take UNC 11.5. They're favored by on the road at Georgia Tech. Trip, what do you feel? You got a wedding on Saturday. That's why you said you're going to be in a Miller Lite
coma. Who gets
coma.
married during football season?
No, I think it's not this Saturday. It's the one after or something. My wife's going to. I'm not going to it. I'm not going to miss any games for a wedding. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
That's
Good.
poor
Just
planning.
making sure. Okay.
But I'll take if you want some picks, I'll take Florida State to cover the 20.5. I like the under in the Virginia-Miami game at 46.5, and to go way off the radar, I really like the Lakers tonight, -6 against the Suns.
Phil, what are the Cavs doing? You don't care about the NBA.
No.
Why do I even bother?
Quick NFL story. Here's how much NFL I watched last week, guys. I'm going through the play-by-play of all the college games, watching replays. I knew the Browns were playing. So usually around 5 minutes to 4, I'll turn the game on. So I turn the game on over here, and I'm not even looking. I don't have the volume on. I'm just looking. I see that they're down and driving with a chance to win the game. And then I look over, and I see the quarterback fumbles, and the other team falls on it. So I shut it off, And so for 4 hours, the Browns lost. But I'm just worried about college football. And then I checked scores in the NFL just for the fun of it, and I see they won the game. So I guess the fumble got overturned by a defensive holding. I didn't even know that for 4 hours. I watched 5 plays of the NFL last week.
Oh,
Wow.
that was a brutal way to lose if you're a Colts person. But yeah, that's a pleasant surprise, to say the least, for anybody who is supporting the Browns. And our man, Secret Bajan man, Division II Shepherd University.
There you go.
Tyson Bajan, let's go. I mean, he's going to take us to the promised land. There's not another loss on the schedule for the Bears. You'll get to see him in full display primetime Sunday night. But hey, we'll be back for Week 10. That's coming up next week. Man, we're into November already, Phil. It's amazing. So Week 9, make sure you know where to find us always, wherever you podcast, College Sports Now, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. It's all there. The Varsity channel on YouTube. Thank you again. Continue to interact with us. Rate, review, subscribe. Follow Phil on Twitter at PhilSteele042. I'm at Kyle Shass, the Lock Doctor at Trip Hurd. Back next week for Week 10. As always, bet smarter, not harder, here on the Phil Steele Show. Thank you.